The blizzard had no mercy that night. The world outside was a blur of white and rage, and her Harley was buried in snow halfway down a desolate mountain road. Her hands trembled from cold and exhaustion as she trudged through the storm, the leather jacket that once carried the proud insignia of the Hells Angels now torn and fading. Her name was Raven, and for the first time in years, she wasn't running from the cops or her enemies, she was running from herself. She stumbled through the darkness until the faint glow of a cabin window appeared through the trees, flickering like a heartbeat. Hope, fragile and dangerous, sparked in her chest. By the time she reached the porch, her boots were soaked, and her strength was almost gone. The door creaked open under her shaking hand. It wasn't locked, the warmth hit her first. Then the smell of burning wood and something faintly familiar, coffee. Inside, the fire still burned, logs crackling gently as if someone had just been there. A half-drunk mug sat on the table. And next to it, a folded piece of paper with her name written on it. Her pulse quickened. Her name. In someone else's handwriting. She grabbed the note, heart pounding against her ribs as she read the first line. If you're reading this, it means you finally made it home. Her knees buckled. She dropped the paper and fell into the nearest chair, tears burning behind her eyes. For years, Raven had lived a life where emotion was weakness. The Hells Angels had taught her to fight, to ride, to survive. But they never taught her what to do when the roar of the engine faded, and silence was all that was left. She joined the gang at 17 after her mother overdosed and her father disappeared. The Angels gave her a family, a name, and a purpose. But they also took her soul one piece at a time. She'd done things she could never undo, watched people she loved vanish into violence, and lost herself in the noise. Tonight, she had finally broken free. She left behind her cut, her gun, and her old life in flames. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't go back now. This cabin, this note, felt like a cruel joke from fate. She picked up the letter again, reading the rest with trembling fingers. You won't believe me, but I've been waiting for you. This place is yours. I fixed it up the way you wanted, wood stove, bike tools in the shed, coffee on the stove. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I hope you'll remember I tried to. Luke. The name hit her like a punch. Luke, the man she'd loved and lost 3 years ago in a gunfight that should have killed them both. He'd been her protector, her brother in arms, and her one shot at peace. But he'd disappeared in the chaos, and everyone told her he'd been buried somewhere out in the desert. She'd believed it because it was easier than hoping. Now, he was here. Or at least, had been. She rushed through the cabin, searching, calling his name, opening doors, finding nothing but silence and dust. The place was warm, but empty. On the wall hung a photograph, her and Luke, smiling, grease on their hands, leaning against the bike they built together. Below it, carved into the wood, "You can always come home." Raven sank to her knees. For the first time in years, she wept without hiding. By morning, the storm had died. The world outside was calm, the sun spilling across the snow like gold. She made coffee and sat by the fire, staring at the photo again. Something inside her had shifted overnight, a kind of peace she hadn't felt since she was a teenager. She explored the cabin, finding tools, clothes, and journals filled with Luke's handwriting. He'd written about leaving the Angels, about finding this land, about waiting for her. Every word carried love and regret. He'd been alive, trying to build a new life for them both. But the last entry stopped 6 months ago. If she never comes, I'll understand. But I'll still leave the fire burning. Tears blurred her vision again. The note, the warmth, it all made sense now. He'd known she'd come, someday. And somehow, he'd made sure she wouldn't face the cold world alone when she did. Outside, the snow began to melt, revealing a small grave near the pines. The marker was simple, no name, just a motorcycle chain wrapped around a cross of wood. She knew instantly. Luke hadn't left her. He'd waited until the end. Raven knelt beside the grave, pressing her hand to the frozen earth. I made it home, she whispered, her voice breaking. And I'll keep it warm, like you wanted. For the first time, she didn't feel lost. Weeks passed. The cabin became hers. She fixed the roof, restored Luke's old bike, and built a small workshop out back. When travelers passed through, she gave them food, warmth, and a safe place to rest, just as he'd done for her. The woman once feared as a Hell's Angel became a guardian of the lost. Her scars didn't fade, but they no longer defined her. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, she lit the fire and poured 2 cups of coffee, one for her, and one for Luke. The wind whispered through the trees, soft and familiar, like his laugh. "You can always come home," she murmured again, smiling through her tears, and for the first time in her life, she believed it. Raven woke to the sound of birds. Not roaring engines, not gunshots, not the chaos that had haunted her dreams for years, just birds. For a long time, she lay still, her hand resting on the empty side of the bed where Luke should have been. The smell of smoke and pine drifted through the cracks in the cabin walls. She sat up slowly, her body sore from months on the road, but her heart, it was lighter. She didn't know how long she'd slept, but outside, the snow had melted into silver puddles, and spring was pushing its way through the mountain. Raven poured herself coffee and sat at the same table where she'd found Luke's note. The edges of the paper were now curled and smudged from her tears. She'd read it every morning since, for the first time, she wasn't planning her next move or escape. She wasn't waiting for someone to chase her down. She just was. But peace, she realized, had its own kind of silence, one that made old ghosts stir. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of the fire reminded her of Luke, his laugh, his touch, the way he'd look at her when she said something reckless. He'd been wild like her once, but he wanted out long before she did. He'd told her, "We can't ride forever, baby. One day, the road ends, and when it does, I want it to end somewhere we can breathe." She hadn't listened. She thought she'd have time, and now she'd give anything to hear that voice again.